Welcome to this explainer. If you own property in the Chicagoland area, you already know the weather here is absolutely unforgiving. But today, we're not just complaining about the cold. We're going to break down exactly why Chicago roofs fail so quickly compared to other cities, the actual science and structural impact behind it, and how Patriot Roofing tackles these unique, localized environmental challenges. Let's jump right in.
40 to 50. Think about that number for a second. 40 to 50. That staggering number represents the amount of brutal freeze-thaw cycles a Chicago roof endures every single winter. Water seeps into these tiny, almost microscopic gaps in your roof, freezes, and then expands. Then it thaws, seeps even deeper, and bam, freezes all over again. This relentless cycle literally destroys roofing materials way faster than what you'd see in climates with just a steady, consistent cold.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll be looking at the extreme weather threat, common roof failures, strict building codes, the Patriot solution, and finally, costs and timelines.
All right, Section 1, Extreme Weather Threat. Let's see exactly how the local climate acts as a relentless antagonist to your home.
What's truly wild here is how these extreme temperature swings physically forced your roof's fasteners to loosen up and sealants to just crack over time. I mean, we're talking about sub-zero Januaries immediately contrasted by those humid 95-degree Julys. Add in Lake Michigan generating wind gusts that easily top 60 miles per hour, literally lifting shingles and tearing flashing, and then top the whole shebang off with an average of 38 inches of annual snow. It's a perfect recipe for constant, unavoidable material expansion and contraction.
Moving on to Section 2, Common Roof Failures. So how exactly does this severe weather translate into actual physical structural damage for the average homeowner? Well, one of the absolutely most destructive forces in Chicago winters is the ice dam. Here's how it plays out. Step 1. Heat loss from your home melts the snow resting up on the higher sections of your roof. Step 2. That meltwater flows down to the cold eaves and refreezes, creating, literally, a solid dam of ice. And then step 3, the water has nowhere to go, right? So it backs up under the shingles. This sheer weight can effortlessly tear off gutters, and the water leaks straight into your attic space, completely ruining your insulation. It's a total mess.
But hey, it's not just the winter weather causing chaos. Think about those classic Chicago bungalows and commercial buildings scattered all across the city. The very ground they sit on is actually an issue. Chicago clay soil settles unevenly over time, and this shifting creates low spots, leading to structural sagging. When that happens on a flat roof, standing water just sits there and rapidly degrades those flat roof membranes.
Okay, Section 3, Strict Chicago Building Codes. To combat these consistent systemic failures, the city of Chicago hasn't just sat back. They've put some very strict mandatory building codes in place.
The absolutely crucial point here is that installing an ice water barrier isn't just a good idea or some optional nice-to-have upgrade, it's actually legally required. City inspectors are going to actively check for this waterproof membrane along the first 3 feet of your eaves. So if a contractor tries to skip it to save you a few bucks, yeah, that's a direct code violation. No way around it.
Furthermore, you know how some people just layer new shingles over old ones? Well, that traps moisture and rots the decking underneath. Because of this, code now dictates a complete permitted tear-off from multiple layers. The city also requires materials with specific wind resistance ratings from A to H, mandatory 8-inch ring shank nails to make sure your deck survives those crazy Lake Michigan wind gusts, and highly specific attic ventilation formulas based entirely on your home square footage.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Patriot Roofing Solution. When your roof is actively battling all these harsh elements and strict regulations, how do you fix it without getting scammed?
You'll see a pretty stark contrast here. Patriot Roofing operates way differently than your typical high-volume roofers. Patriot uses highly trained W-2 employees, not just temporary subcontractors who kind of vanish the second the deposit is collected. They pull every single required city permit and give you detailed line-item pricing. Choosing a contractor who skips permits might seem like a sneaky way to save money right now, but honestly, it creates a massive liability and huge title complications when you eventually try to sell your home. Unpermitted work is literally a homeowner's worst nightmare.
And get this, Patriot Roofing actually responds to those 2 a.m. storm emergencies. If the wind tears off your shingles or a rogue branch punctures your roof, they're out there fast with 24/7 emergency tarping to stop the water intrusion right in its tracks. They even coordinate directly with insurance adjusters, thoroughly documenting hidden damage, like rotting deck boards, to help maximize your claim. Plus, they keep local material inventory on hand to skip annoying weather delays.
and they have deep expertise in everything from vintage 1920s bungalows to ultra-modern architecture.
Finally, Section 5, Realistic Costs and Timelines. Let's tackle the absolute biggest anxiety for any homeowner, right? How much is this actually going to cost, and how long is it going to take?
So, surprisingly enough, labor is actually the most expensive part of a roof replacement in the Chicago area. This is driven by union scale and just a general shortage of skilled trades right now. This is closely followed by the medium-tier costs, which are the pretty high disposal fees for tearing off all those multiple old layers from your roof. Actually, and this might shock you, the materials and the city permits themselves make up the absolute lowest portion of your overall bill.
Now, as for the timeline, for a standard 2,000 square foot home, you can usually expect a pretty straightforward 2 to 4 day process, assuming the weather cooperates with us. Day 1 is entirely consumed by the tear-off and a super thorough decking inspection to hunt for rotted wood. Day 2 focuses on the critical underlayment, putting in those ice water barriers, and all the complex flashing installation. And by day 3, you're usually looking at the final cleanup and scheduling that all-important city inspection.
I want to leave you with this one thought to consider today. Your roof might look perfectly fine from the street, but given those 50 freeze-thaw cycles and those 60-mile-per-hour winds we talked about, is hidden moisture secretly rotting your home from the inside out? Catching early signs of wear with a professional inspection costs way, way less than fixing a catastrophic structural failure later on. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, stay dry out there.